One of my favorite parts of making beats is sampling. More specifically, chopping up samples and turning them into something completely different from what they originally were. Some of the best lo-fi beats are made by just chopping up samples that are already good but sound even cooler with chops made in them. So anyway, in today's video, I'm going to chop up a sample of my own and try to make a really cool lo-fi beat with it. But before you do that, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you haven't already. I'm hoping to reach 500 subscribers by the end of February, so hopefully you'll be able to make it to that goal. Okay, so to begin, I went on Splice, my favorite website for finding samples and stuff like that. I began looking through some of them to find a really good sample to use. I usually like to use more keys samples like Rhodes and pianos, or sometimes guitar samples, because those usually work really well for this kind of chopping stuff. So I found this cool Rhodes piano sample, and I put it into the quick sampler in my DAW Logic Pro. Some people think you really need a really special sampler or something to make sampled lo-fi beats, but really any sampler will work. They all work pretty much the exact same way. Okay, so this is basically what I'd call the hard part of chopping samples. You need to actually do the chopping. You need to find where is a good place to start the sample, where is a good place to end it, what kind of rhythm do you want, what kind of melodies do you want. There are no real rules to this, but here's some tips I'd recommend if you're new to chopping samples. One is just try to find the best sample you can for chopping. So when you're looking on Splice or whatever website you are, try to find ones that you can just hear good sounds from. Also try to find good instruments that lend themselves to good samples. Like I just said before, keys and guitars usually turn out pretty good. And once you're in the actual process of sampling and chopping the sample and that kind of stuff, you just gotta sometimes play around with it a lot. Sometimes you just have to keep trying different things, just trial and error, try to emphasize the good parts of the sample, maybe don't include the bad parts, you don't have to include everything of course. And yeah, just see what works. One more tip I'd recommend is just trying to focus on the rhythm of the sample. Try to see what'll make cool like rhythms and cool patterns and bounces, if that makes any sense at all. I'd recommend looking at artists like Chris Poncelon and Eldre if you want to see some good examples of how to sample correctly. Maybe I'll even leave some links in the description below to sometimes I've heard them make some really cool sounds with their samples. Those two artists really are like the masters at sampling, to be honest. And one thing is, I'm really bad at just playing stuff in. Actually, I don't have a MIDI keyboard, I just play on my typing keyboard, and I'm really bad at getting it right the first time. Usually I have to go back in and mess around with the MIDI, get the notes in the right places, and yeah, this time is going to be one of those times, clearly. Okay, here's what I got the sample sounding like. Next, I'm gonna have to obviously add some drums to this, so it's gonna be the same kind of thing, playing it in, fixing it a little bit later. Let me cut ahead to once I've got the drums all down. Okay, so here's how the drums are sounding. Okay, so this is the main basis of the track, obviously. Let me cut ahead a few minutes and I'm gonna try to add some other stuff, some other instruments, some percussion, and let's see how it sounds after that. Okay, so here we are. I've added a few different instruments to it. Let me just go ahead and show all of them one by one. So first I add this synth preset from Logic's Synth Alchemy called Distant Vintage Organ. I really like the sound of this one, and I think it turned out pretty good. It's a little bit quiet, but I still think it adds a lot to the track. I also went to Spitfire Labs into their new electric guitar sounds, and I found this cool pad sound on one of the electric guitars. Here's how that sounds. Next, I went back into Splice and I found some bass to add to this song. I decided to go with an upright bass sound for this. I just found a few upright bass samples, put them together. I think it really sounds cool because upright bass is usually used for jazz songs, so it adds kind of a jazzy vibe to the track. I also added some ride cymbals, which adds some really good top end to this beat, I think. Adding cymbals and stuff like that always adds some awesome, just top end, high end energy to beats and really makes it sound more lively and full. Next, I decided to add basically a B section to the beat, which means I changed the melody of the sample a little bit, just make it different and add some contrast to what was already there to keep it from getting too repetitive. I kept the drums the same, but I did find some new bass samples to use for this, to just add a little more kind of contrast to it. And that's pretty much it for this beat. I of course have to do some arranging and mixing like always, but that's pretty much the main melody. I hope you learned a little bit about chopping samples in this video if you're new to that kind of stuff. Chopping samples is really super fun, and I think it makes for some really unique beats and some cool melodies. I definitely think every lo-fi beatmaker should try chopping samples at some point in their beatmaking journey if they haven't already. Anyway, I'll probably upload this beat on YouTube sometime in the next few days, but for now I'll just give you a small sneak peek of what the final product's gonna sound like. Make sure to leave a like, tell me in the comments what kinds of videos you want to see next, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and make sure to always stay Gucci.